Hey everybody, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFootU. So today we have a number of people that do some research and are familiar with research, starting with the faculty at Arizona, Warren Joseph, DPM. He's an infectious disease specialist. We have Jeff Robbins at the VA that oversees things that might come in the VA pipeline. We have Lamar Mayer. He is a researcher that brings concepts to actual fruition with medical devices and other types of technology. And then, Alan, I know the least about you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alan Boyk. I'm the Dean of the College of Podiatric Medicine at Kent State. I've been here for about 10 years. That's probably
That's
what you need to
perfect.
know about me.
So, leading it off, Warren, and you've been a great. I just want to let people know he's the type of professor that still sticks with his students. If you have a difficult case, and you do it in a manner in which he can sort of recluse himself with liability, he'll try to steer you in the right direction. So I really
That's my
appreciate that.
secret. Don't tell people that.
Okay, okay. So tell us a little bit about the importance of the course that you picked up on with research at the school.
Well, I mean, I think it goes way back. I was very fortunate to have as one of my two major professional mentors, Dr. Harvey Lamont. And many of the people, especially who are in practice, those who are younger may not remember Dr. Lamont. Talking like in past tense, he's still with us, but he's retired. He was chairman of the Department of Medicine at the Pennsylvania College of Podiatric Medicine, now, of course, Temple. And he brought me in because I had been the first podiatrist to get the infectious disease training. And he was putting together a faculty that was all specialty trained. As opposed to in many of the colleges of podiatric medicine at the time, the medicine department was just basically corns, calluses, and toenails. And then you had the surgeons who were everybody who was anybody. So Harvey's whole idea was to have a faculty of specialists. We had myself, Dr. Rob Chrisman, who was a radiologist, Tony Padava, who was a vascular specialist, and a whole group of people. And he was a strong believer in the publish or perish sort of academic belief system, which wasn't the case and still is not the case in a lot of podiatric academia, I'm sorry to say. But he felt that it was really crucial for our profession, or any profession for that matter, to develop new knowledge. And you had to develop new knowledge through learning and researching and publishing. And we had to do that. That was a major part of our faculty development. That was a major part of our promotional structure. So that was always drilled into me. And when an opening came up, it's over 30 years, almost 35 years ago now, for the editorship of the Journal of the American Podiatric Medical Association, he really pushed me to apply for it because I had already published a number of papers at the time in my fellowship and working under him. And I applied and became editor of the Journal of the American Podiatric Medical Association. I have been for over 30 years, which allows me to have some real say in what gets out there in our profession and what new knowledge is being spread. So I've always been a firm believer in that. So when I moved out here to Arizona, and Dr. Jeff Jensen, who's currently the dean of the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine at Midwestern University, knew that I was coming to Arizona, he contacted me and said, we have this course on evidence-based medicine and research. Would you like to take it over? And that was about 5 or 6 years ago now that I've been course director, and it's in the summer quarter. It's about 10 weeks. This week's a little shortened because Juneteenth falls on one of the sessions that I'm going to be teaching. So I'm scrambling to rearrange things. But the whole course is, the whole idea behind the course, in my mind, is to get our students to learn that they have to be adult learners. All right. They have to be lifelong learners also. I'm not going to teach them to be researchers. Listen, I'm amazed. We have a great student population at the Arizona College. And when I asked them at the first course, how many of you have done research in undergraduate? Almost every one of them has. How many of you have taken statistics? Almost everyone has. I'm not there to teach how to do research, but I'm there to motivate them and teach them on how to become lifelong adult learners. And that's what we do. I mean, we put a lot of emphasis on critical thinking. We put a lot of emphasis on the use of tools such as PubMed. I have 2 full sessions with the library staff to teach about using medical literature databases. We have 3 different sessions, which are all small group journal clubs, where we, with faculty mentorship, they learn to critically evaluate the medical literature so they can understand it. And then, with my experience as being editor of JATMA, I give a lecture on what goes into a particular type of manuscript, the different parts, introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, that sort of thing, and also walk them through the peer review process. I actually log into our system and go through a peer review situation with one of the live papers we had. So I'm very strong believer in students having to understand what's involved. We also require them to do the CITI programs, all right, CITI programs. It's cityprogram.org. They must complete and have a certificate of good clinical practices and also a certificate for IRB for researchers. And that is instrumental. It's part of the course. They have to have those certificates. The university requires that they have those certificates. So anybody who's interested in learning about research, how to do clinical research, highly, highly recommend you go onto the cityprogram.org website, take these courses. They're offered through some of the institutions. You can get them as part if you're a student or a resident. And that's really the basis. And like I said, I'm just really now getting excited about AI, excited and scared. And I've just had 2 Zoom meetings over the last 2 weeks with some PhDs, 2 from USC and 1 from Dartmouth just yesterday, who are ethicists talking about the ethics of AI in research. And I'm sorry that Pat's not on, because I know he lectures a bit on that. He's supposed to lecture in the Midwest meeting on research in AI. So I just think that's going to change the way we're doing things, and everything we talk about now may be totally changed a year from now. That's how quickly things are moving. So I've taken up too much time. We've got some real geniuses here. Let them talk, and see what other people have to say.
I did have one question in closing. Are there any examples, because you've been following bugs and drugs for a long time, of studies that you've seen that you use as examples of research that led you to a different conclusion than what the company was trying to put out?
Well, not just company. A lot of research is corporate, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think right off the bat, we have to get away from this. Anything that's sponsored by corporate America is bad. Everything that's like NIH, because NIH grants are going away, I have a feeling, and we're not going to get political with this particular discussion. But, there are some good corporate research that's going on. That's what the FDA requires, these phase 3 trials, in order to get a drug approved or for a drug not to be approved. And I've seen good drugs not get approved, or drugs I thought were good drugs not get approved because of the phase 3 trial, or drugs that are kind of like questionable get approved, and being surprised about that. But I think the beauty about research is when you find a study that changes the way you think about a particular problem and changes the way you treat patients, change the way you approach patients. And just off the top of my head, a prime example of this would be the OVIVA trial, which was published in the New England Journal about 5 years ago. OVIVA stands for oral versus intravenous antibiotics for osteomyelitis. And it was a study out of the UK, almost 1,200 patients that were given either oral or IV antibiotics for the treatment of osteomyelitis for the first 6 weeks, and they found no difference in outcomes. And that's why I've taken up a lot of the lecturing I do now at CME meetings, is getting away from this whole idea of 6 weeks of IV antibiotics. It's nonsense. It's based on nothing. But then you have a study come along like OVIVA that not only can we say it's based on nothing, now we have a study to show that it's not true and they're good alternatives. So to me, that's what's exciting about research, is finding those studies that change the way you think about medicine and change your approach to patient care. They're few and far between, but boy, when they come out and they slap you on the face, that's a major benefit to all of us.
Jeff, tell us about your role at the VA and some of the things that have come across your desk with podiatric research or things that might be related to preservation of limb that you
Sure,
evaluate, what your role is.
sure. So my role, I'm the National Podiatric Medical Director for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I oversee approximately 140 different podiatry units, about 600 or so podiatrists, another 230 residents. And we are indeed engaged in a lot of research, but obviously my primary role is in terms of patient care. But as Warren was saying before, and I think this is a really important point, that research, the really beneficial research, is the research that comes to a conclusion that we can use to improve what we do for patients. And we're working on a couple of those now, and we also have some AI that we're looking at as well. And AI, not necessarily in terms of research, but in terms of improving patient care that is not as controversial, i.e., doesn't need the kind of guardrails that we think about when we think about AI, but automating some things that will allow us to treat patients better. But one of the things, and again, the VA is involved in bench research, clinical research, and quality research. Obviously, we're not doing much bench research, podiatrists per se, but we are doing a lot of clinical and a lot of quality research in terms of looking at different disease states, especially limb salvage, especially diabetes. Right now, we're undertaking a major study on the patient monitoring, remote patient monitoring devices, pedal monitoring devices for both temperature and pressure. And what we're looking at is that the studies that were done in the private sector, even the ones that included VA patients, veterans, we're not having the same results that they had. And again, that's not to say that the industry sponsored research is not valid. But what it does say is that one paper doesn't make for a standard of care. And it requires other papers and other research projects to look at that to make sure that the information that we're looking at, that we're becoming comfortable with, is indeed the highest level of evidence that we can use, and is actually correct. Now, that's not to say that the devices, the monitoring devices, aren't good at all. What it means is that we didn't get the same result, at least the first go around. Now, admittedly, the number of scans that we have, you need to assess your patient to see if they can muster this immune response. Otherwise, this is not going to help them. But what we do need to do, if that's the case, is we need to reduce the cadence of when we see them back for that surveillance and for that basic foot care that is so important to limb salvage. I know that surgery is exciting and sexy. I know that research is sexy and exciting. Basic foot care, surveillance is not so sexy. And yet sometimes, oftentimes, that is the key to limb salvage and prevention of amputation and ulcers.
Okay.
Are you seeing some slides? Great,
Yeah, we see it.
great.
This is a project that
Yeah.
Lamar and I were talking about. I'm very interested in pulsed electric magnetic fields. For years, they've been FDA approved for bone stimulators. They're looking at PEMF, pulsed electric magnetic fields, for wound healing. I'm doing a project with Patrick DeHare where we're still going through the IRB process because of the upregulation of osteoblastic activity at looking at Sever's disease. But another thing that actually got a device approved in the VA, a very low level PEMF unit, is for diabetic neuropathy. Apparently, the device that was approved had some equivalency to gabapentin in reducing neuropathic pain. I think that was the measure of the study. So at any rate, Lamar and I were talking about something that could be maybe complied with a little bit easier and maybe a little bit higher power on the Tesla that might have some better benefit for patients. So take it away, Lamar.
Sure. So just to clarify, I'm not a clinician. I'm a materials engineer by background training. And so our company does electromagnetics for drug delivery, for MRI, that kind of thing. So I actually met Ben on a jog through Baltimore. We started talking. So yeah, we were thinking about ways of making it really easy for patients to comply, really easy to deliver magnetic pulses, magnetic stimulation to patients. And I think people kind of already know all of this, but the standard of care for diabetic neuropathy is not exactly working, I think is the impression I get from Ben. Things like controlling blood sugar, pain management, and lifestyle modifications are not always complied with by the patient. And also alternative medicines, acupuncture, herbal supplements, there's mixed results, I suppose, and also kind of takes a little bit of kind of patient effort. Then there are also some advanced research approaches, stem cells, gene therapy, and in-office neuromodulation techniques that require the patient to essentially, get themselves to a provider. Yeah, so our overlapping interest here is kind of like I build magnets for other applications, and Ben was thinking, well, I use electromagnetic pulses for treatment in my office, but I would love to think about innovations in that space. So transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation therapy, there's an enormous market for this, and there's numerous products on the market, both kind of plug in and sit down at your home, and more mobile options, socks, etc. But there does seem to be, let's see, so the mode of delivery is pretty convenient. Mine electrical pulses via electrodes, and you can get devices as cheap as $30. I think the socks were like, $20 or $30. And they're also kind of plug-in devices that you stand on that are more like $500. Let's see. So some advantages and drawbacks: they're non-invasive and drug-free, and they are portable. But the effectiveness seems to vary, and relief seems to be temporary. And there's some kind of ongoing debate in the literature regarding efficacy and use. So for pulse electromagnetic fields, I think the main drawback here is that you can go see a provider and receive these treatments. There's also mixed results in the literature, I think, but there are few to no devices that kind of deliver efficiently on a regular basis to the patient that are inexpensive. There are devices or there are apparatus you can buy for home use, but they're fairly expensive. Then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were in thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're also, many of them are abroad. So it's kind of like the Wild West. If you get a unit from China, there's really not a lot of great safety data from China. Some of the other companies do a little bit more due diligence. Those devices tend to be a lot more expensive. Some of the Swiss, German devices.
So, it's just kind of the obvious. What does a person do every day? Is you put on shoes or sandals or something like that. And so we just thought, well, couldn't you integrate a coil into your insole and either charge it up or have it run on a recharged like piezo that takes the compression from a step, charges the circuit, and then delivers a pulse with whatever frequency kind of you wanted to dial the circuit to deliver. And it's, I mean, there are already insoles that have electrodes and wires in them for kind of heating for snowboarders and skiers to keep their feet warm. And so it's not a ton of innovation. There would be some innovation in terms of generating the correct circuit that's robust enough to handle like thousands of steps a day. But that's kind of one of the things that we were just kind of thinking about in our conversations as a way to get patients something that's kind of minimal effort, but is still able to potentially deliver magnetic pulses on a regular basis.
You were even mentioning a mechanical capacitator of just the step itself, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's right. You could use a piezo responsive material to charge up a circuit based on the compression of a person's weight.
Well, stay tuned. Thank you, Lamar, for presenting that. I see that Dr. Dehaer and Dr. Armstrong have entered the room. And oh, there's Pat. He might be on a phone call. David, let's start with you. You're well, you and Pat are actually the poster childs of getting studies out there. Him at his residency program, you at Keck. Congrats again on your sort of MVP of volume. Tell us a little bit about, and I'll be interested in both what you and Patrick have to say on where you think we are with podiatric research. What's obviously we've accomplished a lot. We've carved out an identity, but where are we? Some of the challenges, and where do you think we're going?
Well, hello again to everyone. My gosh, I see this is like a murderer's row of characters here to my right, not to my political right. You got friggin' Joseph and Robbins and good luck. Boy, bad to hear. Lamar, it's good to meet you. The total pleasure. Well, look, I think that it's a particularly exciting time, I think, to be working in this area. I think amidst a lot of folks saying, well, why there aren't as many applications to podiatry schools. Well, I mean, but the quality of the work that's going on now in academic institutions is really stellar. It used to be when I was coming up. I mean, I think I was pretty much given everything. Growing up with my dad and a lot of giants and podiatrists, so I figured I didn't have much. And some of the giants are actually on this Zoom right now, actually, for sure. But I figured I didn't have any excuses, and back in the day, I was often, first to my species in some of these places like hospitals or on manuscripts and on these other things. But now what's wonderful is that the women and men coming up now, it's just normal for them to be for them to be active. Now, does everyone want to be participate in research? Reporting on their outcomes surgically, medically, mechanically, etc. No, but that's true as well in every other specialty in medicine. But it is much more of a meritocracy now than it used to be. It used to be a lot different and a lot harder, and the path was made easier by the folks that came before.
Pat, do you want to, I don't want you to spill all the beans for the lecture that you have coming up at the Chicago meeting, but you've been very interested in AI, and there's two things that I thought, since you do so much research through Ascension and with your residents, develop your IRBs, right with Ascension. What are some of the challenges first that you've encountered, with recruitment and some of the other things that you mentioned, and then take us through where you think we're getting with AI.
Well, sorry, I'm driving, so I don't have my camera on.
No,
so
that's.
I don't want to look at the ceiling in my car. I was actually just doing a student recruitment thing for.
Hey, hold on, Pat. Do you have a sunroof or maybe a moonroof? Maybe we do want to see. Maybe you.
I do. It's woefully gray and gross in Indiana right now. So,
all right.
I was doing a student recruitment event for Kent State for Dr. and his team. So I'm just leaving there, but
We appreciate that.
you're welcome. Yeah, one of the things is our facility is a teaching institution, so they have the resources. Like we have a PhD that helps with the statistics and study design and research, and they give us the resources to put out literature, and we have our own IRB, and the residents who end up in our program are usually interested in doing research, and so I think we have about 8 or 9 active research projects going on right now, and we work with a lot of different attending physicians, so different opportunities, whether it be in the diabetic limb salvage world or the surgical world, or especially like recon, which is what I tend to do the most of. But not a lot of residency programs, I think, unfortunately, have those kind of resources. And I think that's been one of the attractions for us to be able to pull really high-level students into our residency program.
Where do you think the future is with integrating AI from what you've encountered so far?
Yeah, I've been using AI to help kind of get through documents and to really assess the literature. The other thing that AI has been helpful for me is I can ask certain websites a question like, has this particular topic that I may have an interest in been adequately researched or not? And I don't want to, spend time and effort in doing something that's already a question that's already been answered. So it helps me craft that initial research question easier. I mean, I don't think AI is meant to be used instead of you doing the work. I think it's meant to supplement your work and to make you more efficient and allow you to have a more comprehensive overview of the particular topic you're researching.
Yeah, if I may pop in here, I mean, I'm kind of new to the whole AI world. And in fact, my exposure to AI, and David will remember this, we are sitting in the speaker ready room at the debates meeting at the University of Texas. This was at the Gaylord in Dallas. And they had scones and clotted cream and jam. So I got into this discussion with David, being the Anglophile that we both are, about the proper way to eat a scone and whether you put clotted cream on first or jam on first, and how it differs wherever you are in the country in England. And he pulls out his phone and asks ChatGPT, what describe to us the different ways to eat scones and clotted cream? And it came up with this beautiful answer. And then he starts showing me Notebook LM and how that works. And 5 minutes, I mean, I get home, I go into Notebook LM, I upload 25 papers about osteomyelitis. Within 2 minutes, I'm able to query the database about osteomyelitis and get these incredible answers. And then I push the button for the verbal, and in 4 minutes, I timed it. It came up with a half-hour podcast of these two, one male, one female voice, kibitzing and just talking back and forth, and have this incredible discussion about diabetic foot osteomyelitis. And I was amazed and scared S-less at the same time. It was amazing, but it got me seriously worried about ethical considerations of using AI in research and in publication. Again, as editor of the journal, where do we draw the line? And I will tell you that AMA, International Committee on Medical Journal Editors, Academy of Family Practice, they all have these guidelines on use of AI, not only in research, but in writing and in peer review. And I don't think that this has been well enough examined. I want to adopt some of these for JATMA, but I will tell you, and I've had, thanks to David, I talked to 2 PhDs at USC, I mentioned that, and one from recently from Dartmouth, and talking about the ethics issues. And we don't know what we don't know. And we still have to count on the humans to tell us where they've used AI, where they haven't used AI, because disclosure becomes an issue. AI might be good. I love Pat's idea of telling him whether or not a question's a good question. But to that end, this is the ultimate irony. I decided to look into what's been written on ethical use of AI in peer review. And you know what the best source was for finding that out?
AI.
AI. Yeah. So I think it's in its infancy. I think what Pat's using it for is great. It makes a lot of sense. But when we get past that, and when AI is starting to be used to crunch data, to do decision making, and that's one of the things the two guys from USC told me, that AI is terrible at decision making. The use of ethics, AI doesn't have to go through an IRB. Um, where are we going to go with this? And that's something that I don't know yet, and I don't know if you have any thoughts,
So,
David.
yeah, so what Warren, and I want to jump in here real quick because I think that these are the kinds of things that we're struggling with as well in the VA with AI. And it would seem to me, and I know most of you are familiar with CRISPR and that technology and what they had to go through to throw guardrails. In fact, there's a gentleman in China right now who is in jail and serving a life sentence for creating two twins that were immune to the HIV virus. I thought he was going to be the next coming, and he's in jail and doing hard time in China. But I think that another type of conclave, like they did for CRISPR, has to happen for AI in order to put those guardrails on that everyone accepts. And because if you start with we're going to throw some out here and throw some out there, then people are going to be accepting different ones. And I really think this really needs to be a concentrated effort to create those guardrails.
Yet our vice president, just at the big international AI meeting, came out and said he should remove all restrictions on AI use. Where's this going to go? And when you have Elon Musk trying to buy OpenAI for $100 billion, all right,
Yeah.
Who's going to put these
Well,
guardrails?
let's not exaggerate. It was 97 billion.
Mea culpa. Mea culpa. I think you're right, Jeff. These guidelines have to be out there, but who's going to develop them? Who's going to put them up? We can make them for a journal. We can make them for a profession, but in the larger picture, I don't know. Pat, what's your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Even like some of the AI apps or websites I use to just kind of review articles, they don't do a great job. Like I find holes in the summary of the articles, and so that makes me worried in terms of what you're talking about and in the more serious uses of AI and where it fits in decision making and things like that. I think it's already being done by like insurance companies on approval of procedures and things like that, unfortunately. But I think it's already in our real world for those of us in clinical practice. But from a research standpoint, I think it's certainly, we have to come to grips on what it's okay for and what it's not okay for.
Pat, do you think there's a role for sifting through meta-analysis studies? I find one of the most frustrating things when I'm trying to do a literature review is you'll have a meta-analysis, and I'm just going to take pulse electric magnetic fields as an example. You'll have completely different machines, all grouped into a conclusion about what it's doing for wound healing or bone healing, whatever the parameter being measured. And I think that's a challenge when you've got, very low Tesla units. And I think the same exists with other meta-analysis that have completely different endpoints. So not just you, but anybody that has a comment on that how we can call better meta-analysis studies. Or maybe the answer is there's just not enough studies that are consistent that we can compare. Any thoughts?
Well, I think meta-analysis can be very useful, and they're very high up on the research pyramid. I actually just reviewed an article in Juvenile Hallux valgus that was in a different journal. Sorry, Warren, they asked me to do it. But it was a really good article on minimal invasive hallux valgus surgery for pediatric bunions, and they did a really good job. They went through all the proper steps, to do a high quality meta-analysis. Now, I don't know, and I read all types of journals. I don't see that sort of methodology approach to meta-analysis being done consistently throughout the journals. I think that comes back to the journals to hold their authors to a higher standard. Warren can probably speak to that better than I can.
It's funny you say that, because just today I looked at a paper that was just submitted to JAMA. They purported to be a systematic review. And I won't go into any more details because I don't want to identify it. But they looked at PubMed with basically using two terms, and that was their systematic review. They did not use any Prisma guidelines. They did not even give me a Prisma flow chart. That's not a systematic review. And and that's one of the problems. I teach our students how to read forest plots. I love forest plots. I mean, to me, once I understood how to read a forest plot, it opened up these whole world of things to me. But the problem is, and as you said, Pat, a meta-analysis and systematic review are very high up on the so-called research pyramid. But and I know, maybe David can address this, that it's garbage in, garbage out. When you look at a systematic review and they pull 1,000 papers and they base their meta-analysis on 7, I kind of wonder what they used in terms of inclusion and exclusion, who did that, why they did it that way. And I think that's where we can run into the biggest issue, because we've all seen systematic reviews and meta-analyses that show diametrically different answers. I don't know, David, I mean, I hate to take over from Ben, but what's your...
No,
opinion?
go, by all means.
Go ahead, please. Oh, you said Ben, by all means. Okay, sure. Well, then by all means. Look, I think there are entire now, like, actually AI, I'm not kidding. There are AI-based kind of apps that will now help pump out meta-analyses. So that's why you're seeing so many, especially in predatory journals, especially coming from, especially like the PRC, like People's Approach China, and other places where there's a real pressure on academics to publish, not necessarily or perish, but at least academically perish. And the big idea, of course, for Xi is, and the entire Chinese, the People's Party is to lead the world in not only in biomedical research, but in research in general. So there's a real push to pump out manuscripts, and they will pay in some ways clinicians, the publishing fee and everything. And it's led to a whole industry of not only of predatory journals, but of apps to make some of this stuff easier to do. And actually, I love the idea of these things making things easier, to where you could do better quality research, so long as, just like you guys were saying, it's not garbage in, garbage out. Because of course, if you're not including everything that you're supposed to be including, or you don't understand the subject, or you are not in the field that you're doing a meta-analysis on, you may not have the nuanced, understanding, just like Ben said, of a given area. And you may be talking about one procedure or another procedure, which are completely different. And if you are sitting in your room, pumping this out without ever having been in a clinic, or in the OR, well, it's a very different sort of scenario than if you are walking it like you clinically and academically talk it. Those are two different things. Both things could use an app. Oh, by the way, but and I think, Warren, I mean, I've had these for like almost a year, these Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and I can just turn them on. Like I could just do now I could do live AI, and I can get real time. It's unbelievable. I'm getting real time when I'm talking to patients. Translation. It's not real time yet, though. It's still like a second and a half delay, which is a little weird. But my patients love it. I love it. I'm using this thing instead of actually some of the other things because, it just came on actually as I was talking. But I could do this right now. I could say, okay, Meta, what am I looking at? And it's going to, I don't know, you'll see a blink here, and it's going to tell me what I'm looking at. And it's probably going to say, you are looking at a screen, but it looks like a Zoom call. That's what it's just told me. So, I mean, I've got all of this stuff coming in here, and I use it in the operating room. in real time, and it's astonishing. But this is happening now. You know, how do we how do we? I'm going to turn this damn thing
For
off.
an early adopter of Google Glasses, how did that work out?
Oh yeah, I had to look. I love those things, but those things are. I have two sets of bricked Google Glass in my drawers, my drawer down in my office. But the point is, yeah, you can make fun of all these things. Some are going to make it, some aren't. But the key is, this form factor now looks like it's going to work because you have battery life marrying with latency, marrying with cameras, marrying with Bluetooth radios. So finally, stuff, and more important, like with Google Glass, you were wearing it. This is 10 years ago, which doesn't seem like that long ago to me, but it is really a long time for this stuff. And people saw people with those things on. You just looked so creepy. I mean, for me, it was great, but for other people, they thought you were super creepy, and they were calling people glass holes. I don't know if you guys remember that. If you wore that, because culturally, it was really, really creepy, creep-tastic, I called it, looking at someone with like a glowing thing on their eyeball. Now it's a little less so, or people at least are used to it. And that was helped by, we walk down the street, and most people have now on a sidewalk in any town, most people have AirPods, or they have buds in their ears now, and it's not at all weird to walk into the store and see that now. And these things are in real time now giving us information. Some are providing translation. Some are providing a lot of other things, and they're providing a lot of health information. So this stuff is evolving so quickly, and it's evolving faster than our ethics. It's evolving faster than our philosophy. And we need, just like you had Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau having a social contract back in the day, a few hundred years ago. Now I think we need like a social cyber contract, just like you're saying. I mean, and back in the day, Hobbes, I think in Leviathan, if I'm not mistaken, I think back in what he said, if we didn't, give some of our rights away, then instead of living in a state of nature, our life would be nasty, brutish, and short. Now, if we give some of our self away and our information away, but we have this deal with these devices that are on us and pretty soon in us, it's going to be the deal, so our lives aren't nasty, brutish, and overlong. So we can be living right up until we die. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to be a patient and a person that's playing with these gadgets, and excited to be a doctor in this area. I will now.
But I will.
Shut up.
Yeah. But I will tell you that Buddy Holly was wearing those glasses in the 50s.
I like exactly. I mean, it's exactly right. Or Roy Orbison. So I mean,
Right, there you go.
I no, well, no, Buddy, came before Roy, as you know.
Yes, he did.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. But all these gadgets are just that. They're just gadgets. They're it's different information, and this stuff is just speeding along now. And these things, I gave a talk.
David, you bring up a really important point, and the last soliloquy really highlights that for me, and that is we have to use technology, not allow the technology to use us. And that's how I view all of this stuff. A lot of this stuff I don't need and I don't use. I don't have it. A lot of this stuff I see the potential in. I will try it. If it doesn't work, it's gone. But again, I think that you're absolutely right about all of these devices and AI in general, that it is here to stay. And so we need to figure out how to use it safely, and how to ensure that all of the guardrails that we need are going to be there, or that we can identify those bad players that are not following the guidelines or are not using them unethically. So I think that's going to be important. And the irony is, AI may be able to tell us who is and who isn't.
That's it. That's exactly right. I think we have a lot of you ask most the Sam Altmans of the world, or the Satya Nadellas of the world, or other people, they all have what's called it's a kind of a geek term. They call it a PDUM, a space DOOM. What's your predictive percentage guess that the whole world is going to end in an AI generated apocalypse? And different people have different kind of P dooms in Silicon Valley and beyond. I tend to think that while I see a lot of aspects that are scary, of course, I see a lot more that are really exciting. And I think that it's highly unlikely that we're going to have, even if it's not if, I mean, within a year or two, you're going to have AGI. We're going to have artificial general intelligence. I mean, it's coming. It's here. And the whatever you call it, this is a fuzzy term, but where you're going to have a device, or you're going to have, it may not be an LLM, but some kind of model that is going to do better than 90% of the 90th percentile in a given domain. That's already happening, right? It's already acing the LSAT and even parts of the MCAT and other things now. And so you're going to have this really astonishing amount of information. But that doesn't mean that this gadget is somehow going to have sentience and is going to be doing stuff. And as an agent, agents are super hot now. AGI in your stead, right? And doing it to harm you. I don't necessarily see that dystopian future where somehow this thing's going to take over, and we're going to have a world where they're going to start where everyone is going to be afraid to answer the door because someone's going to be asking for Sarah Connor, and I think that's possible, but not likely, because but it's exciting, right? I mean, and by the way, I would tell you, I put in the chat there, you guys definitely ought, if you haven't played around with Notebook LM, I would say just stop what you're doing and do what Warren said, because you guys will have more of a wow factor than you ever did when you played with ChatGPT. This is astonishing.
It
just
is.
is.
I mean, that podcast it comes up with is just unbelievable.
Yeah, or not just that. I mean, just having a chat accurate.
Oh no, no,
Your stuff with you could put PDFs in, it doesn't matter, and it will make you FAQs. It'll make you a timeline, and the stuff is accurate because you control the input. So the garbage in is your garbage, right? So it's which is pretty great. It is transformative stuff. And it's not getting the credit I think that it needs to get right now. And now, by the way, Warren, I don't know if you tried, but there's actually now you can add a third person into that podcast live, where you can go in and you could say, hey, and then it'll say, hey, well, we got a call. We got someone coming in. You can start talking to people. I mean, the Turing test is so passe now.
It's an amazing thing. In fact, it's so interesting to me. We have a curriculum committee meeting on Monday for the college, and they put out a call for anybody who wants to add something to the agenda. And I actually said, I want to discuss the use of AI, because our students are using this more than any of the old timers sitting up on this, other than David, sitting up on this chat. They're using it. They're more familiar with it than we are. We need to figure out the best way to use it to educate our students, because it will change the way we educate. I mean, when I saw that and the ability to just upload these, 25 random papers on my files on osteomyelitis, and querying those, and as David said, just getting these incredibly detailed referenced answers. We need to understand it, and we need to, again, look at the ethical side of it. But it's changing the way we teach. It's going to change the way we practice. It's going to change the way we live.
Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for partaking tonight. I think it stimulated some good discussion, and for those that are looking for more detail on that AI that you're going to present in Chicago, when is that, Patrick?
That's at the Midwest Podiatry Conference, and it's March 7th through 12th, I think, or 11th, something like that.
Okay.
And the AI portion of the lecture is on Sunday. I think it's March 11th or 12th. I don't remember off the top of my head.
All right. Well, hopefully this added some different things you can think about the feedback that we had tonight as well. Does anybody else have some final comments that they'd like to express? All right, then. Well, this is great. Thanks everybody for participating. This is a great roundtable. Really appreciate it.
Super fun.
Take
Bye,
care,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks for
Good
letting me
night.
play hooky. Ciao, ciao.